Welcome to another episode of CRE Unplugged. I'm your co-host, Ryan Elazari, and with me is the incomparable Nadine Ezzi. How are you, Nadine?
Ryan, you always make me feel so good with those introductions. I'm better now. Thank you. I'm good. How are you?
I'm doing wonderful being with you with another episode. We got over 1,000 views with episode 4, and we just hope to keep growing, right?
1,000, holla. I know. I don't know who you are watching us out there, but we thank you. And we're sorry, too, at the same time. I don't know why I felt that was appropriate, but thank you for sticking it out with us. 1,000, I know. That's like legit.
Yeah. We're very proud, and we want to keep our audience members in tune with what we're doing. And I also was thinking about, we never really talked about the song that we have in our intro, which is because we kind of wanted that Middle Eastern feel, background, and it got to remind me of my love of the Gypsy Kings growing up.
Really? You're into the Gypsy Kings?
I was really into the Gypsy Kings, and I got to see them live at a wedding once, and I literally pushed everyone aside, stood front row, and was dancing and clapping for them. It was incredible. What did you grow up listening to?
I can't think of a Gypsy King song right now.
Bamboleo? Volare?
Sing it a little bit for me. Give me like a line.
Bamboleo!
Oh, yeah.
Bamboleo.
Oh, yeah. I love Gypsy Kings. Oh, you were at a wedding?
I was at a wedding and they played there live.
Did you start like crowd surfing?
Yeah, I was definitely. I got physical.
Yeah, you started a little mosh pit at the wedding. Have you ever crowd surfed? Yeah. Have you ever crowd surfed at a concert?
No, have you?
Yeah, once. Once it was in New Orleans, and it was at this music festival that's I don't know if they still do it. It's every Halloween, called Voodoo Fest. It's like an outdoor festival. Oh, God, I was in college. So this is like 2001, 2002. And what's the band? Hole that sang the song, I'm Only Happy When It Rains. Was that the band? Remember that? I'm only happy when it rains. Remember that song?
Yeah, I remember.
Anyway, okay, so they're on stage. And I swear, as soon as the lead singer says that opening line, I'm only happy, the sky opened up and it started pouring rain and the crowd went wild, right? Anyway, so that was one story. But crowd surfing, no doubt. Gwen Stefani was playing that concert, and I used to have a huge girl crush on Gwen Stefani. Still do. I crowd surfed all the way to the front to Gwen Stefani. Nobody dropped me, but the whole time I'm thinking, like, if somebody drops you, I'm going to be on my neck and probably paralyzed. It was an incredible experience. You feel like you're kind of flying. It's really weird.
Was this No Doubt, or was she just solo?
No, this was No Doubt. This was still in the original days of No Doubt. Yeah, this was like some years ago. I surfed right on up to Gwen. It was an amazing experience. Music for me was pretty varied growing up. In junior high, I was really into the hip hop that was coming out at the time. So like Snoop Dogg and Dr. Dre and all them, but like my classmates would make fun of me. But you know what? My very first cassette tape, I think that I ever had, was New Kids on the Block. So my music has definitely evolved over the years. It was New Kids on the Block, Paula Abdul, Janet Jackson, and then I started going into hip hop, right? We're talking 95, 96 right now, Diddy and all them. I mean, it was classic. And then today it's so varied. I mean, honestly, like I listen to everything. I'm even starting.
Are you a Swiftie?
No, I knew you were going to ask me that. I'm not a Swiftie. I have no hate. There's no hate against her. The music doesn't talk to me. I like music's got to grab me. It just doesn't do anything for me. So yeah, I don't know. I do wonder if I would have liked her when I was 13.
You probably would.
Really? You think so?
Yeah.
I was listening to like 311 when I was 13. You remember 311?
I remember 311. Oh, you liked these grunge bands, didn't you?
I did. I was
baggy jeans and like walked around like you were.
No, but I had the plaid shirt that was buttoned up all the way to here. Remember I had the flannel shirt, right? And yeah, only on Fridays because I went to Catholic school, so we had to wear the uniform every day. But when we got to dress down on Fridays, yeah, I was very indie. I was a weirdo.
We're gonna one day have to talk about your days in Catholic school.
There was a lot of them, kindergarten through college. A lot of them. A lot of them, man. Yeah. We could talk about that another time. I'll have to mentally prepare for that one. Yeah, that's all tucked away in a different file in the back of my mind somewhere. No, but I love the intro song. I love the intro song to our podcast because it is just so us. Yeah, we both come from Middle Eastern backgrounds, and we were like, we need this music. We need this music to represent us. It's hot. Speaking of hot, temperatures have been off the charts this summer. I know it's been pretty hot here in Boston. I know it's been hot in New York City. I think right now, as we are recording this, the Midwest is going under a historic heat wave. And air conditioning and HVAC are running around the clock. So this is a serious issue.
Yeah, which is why we decided to bring on Mead Rusert. He's VP and GM of Building Technologies. And we thought it was important to bring him on because right now, 24 states have passed regulations requiring building owners to meet certain sustainability thresholds, with non-compliance resulting in large penalties and fines. And on the city level, there's regulations that have been passed in New York, LA, Boston, and DC. To comply with these new laws and avoid hefty fines, owners need to start thinking about building technologies.
They really do. That's half the states that have already passed regulations. So this is not going anywhere. But today's guest has expertise in HVAC, energy efficiency, and smart building solutions, and will provide you, our listeners, with valuable insights into how these very impressive technologies, in my opinion, can drive both sustainability and cost savings, which I know we're all very concerned with.
By the end of this episode, you will also leave with strategies to foolproof your assets while enhancing operational efficiency and reducing environmental impact.
So without further ado, let's dive into today's conversation. All right. And with that, I am excited to introduce our guest, Mead Rusert. Mead is Vice President and GM of Building Technologies for Carrier Corporation. Welcome, Mead.
Thanks for having me, Nadine and Ryan. It's great to be on the podcast, and thanks for having me. Really appreciate it. Appreciate the opportunity.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Always good to chat about what we did. So.
Yeah, Mead. So we understand you just came back from a trek in New Mexico with Boy Scouts. So tell us, what was harder, the hiking or being with a pack of teenagers?
So great question. It's funny because it was all work, right? But it's funny, the hiking part, you get rewarded by a nice view when you get to the top of the mountain. But I have to say, with the kids, there was a lot of work too, trust me. But it was really cool to see how they grew through the trip. Really, I mean, it sounds a little bit trite, but by the end of the trip, they really had grown and really felt like they accomplished something. That was really cool to see. So that made it all worthwhile.
How many kids were there?
There were only 6. So 6 kids.
Oh, okay.
So it wasn't too bad. It wasn't like a whole flock of like 20 kids or anything.
I was envisioning like a pack of teenagers. Yeah. And as I get older and say I walk through like a shopping center or mall, I find myself like, get scared when a pack of youths come by. Is that like a sign that you get scared? Like, oh, there's a pack of youths approaching.
Yeah, well, Nadine, it reminds me a lot about Lord of the Flies. Like, was that a book that you always?
I mean, gosh, it's like in high school. I haven't read that since freshman year of high school.
Yeah, that's what I was envisioning when Mead went on this.
Oh, yeah. With the conch and everything. I can see that. Okay. I can really see that.
The conch shell. Exactly.
Yeah, exactly. With the conch shell. All right. Excellent. So Mead, while the majority of your career has been at Carrier, you have held a number of interesting and different roles at Carrier. Could you share with us your career journey and how you got to where you are today?
Sure. That'd be great. I appreciate that. So, what's been great at Carrier, I've been at Carrier over 30 years, which I can't even believe. Time flies. But what's been great is I've had the opportunity to kind of do a lot of different businesses and different things within Carrier. So it never really felt for long like I was doing the same thing for a long time. I felt like I was moving to different businesses all the time. Started as an engineer, mechanical engineer in the refrigeration business, then moved to the commercial HVAC business, large, big industrial, commercial type equipment, developing that kind of gear. Then mid-career, had a chance to move into product management and marketing. So I just wanted to be closer to customers, and I kind of like that side of it. Then I quickly realized that that's a tough transition, moving from like the black and white of engineering to the very gray zone of marketing and people's behavior. But got through that. Did marketing, number of other items, and then ended up working in the controls business at Carrier, which is Automated Logic. So a lot of people may not know that, but Automated Logic is owned by Carrier. It has been for almost 20 years now, which is hard to believe.
Oh, wow.
And is our primary building automation go-to-market brand. So,
is this your favorite role so far?
Yeah, definitely. What's great about controls and building automation is you get to talk to customers about solving problems. The HVAC business is great as well. Nothing against that, but you tend to talk about very specific things. Very either how do I tweak a little bit more of efficiency out of a chiller, this or that, very, very specific. Whereas with building controls, you're really doing solutions. You're meeting with the customer in their space. You're talking about the building, not a particular thing. You're talking about the building, how they operate the building, how the building works, how to help solve their problems. And that's just a lot more fun in my view. So I think you can have a lot of impact as well. Yeah.
Absolutely.
So now it's we've grown from Automated Logic. We've made some acquisitions, and so now we've created this group of businesses at Carrier called Carrier Building Technologies, which is a group of businesses including Automated Logic, our Nlight data center infrastructure management software business that we acquired a couple of years ago, and that business kind of manages how servers and assets in a data center are used. Abound, our building IoT platform, which really helps get into the tenant space and the user space, and we'll talk more about that. And I think that's really topical for this audience. UTech, which is an equipment controls business, embedded controllers for HVAC. And then finally, Noresco, which is a performance contracting business and energy solutions business. So kind of run the gambit of the technologies in the building and kind of bringing those all together into one place, which is really exciting.
That's quite the portfolio, but as you said, we are going to get into what all of those do in a little bit, but yeah.
Great.
Mead, your tagline is making buildings better through building technologies, which we understand from you is changing the industry's mindset to have the building work for you and not us work for the building. Do you see that mindset shift with property owners? If not, what are your obstacles standing in your way and what strategies you implement to overcome that?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I think it's important because those of us in the industry, building technologies, prop tech, whatever you want to call it, we work our lives and careers and all this technology behind the scenes in the building that people don't typically see. In fact, we spend our careers hiding the technology, right? You don't want to see, mechanical things in the building and all that kind of stuff. So bringing attention to the tenants and the actual people in the building, kind of changing the dialogue from working with the facility managers who we love. I mean, we love facility managers. That's who we sell to and work with every day, and they make the buildings work. I think they're the unsung heroes of the property business. But we've forgotten, I think, as an industry, the people that are actually who are there to serve, which are the people in the building. They've kind of been forgotten over the years. So I think when we talk about, or at least I think when we talk about this idea of making buildings better, it's with the tenants in mind, the people in the space in mind, and shifting that mindset from just having the building work or be a place for shelter or, a safe place to go to a place where people want to go, which is very topical now with, coming out of COVID. A place that's comfortable, safe, secure, and is a nice place to be. People are starting to get it now, I think, like never before. And we'll probably talk more about that a little bit later, but some of the research around that. But what's also really interesting, I think it's like, what good feels like when you're in a good, well-performing building, and you know what bad feels like. It's just that we've always taken it for granted, I think. A bad building, it's stuffy, it's humid, it's uncomfortable. Pretty much all the schools I grew up in were in that category, right?
Exactly.
But we survived. but you're in some of these new buildings that are fresh, clean, well ventilated, and you just feel better and you get it right away. So I think our job is to call attention to that and to what's possible. So I think, again, that's been forgotten, in the past. So the barriers to that, again, are budgets. Why don't people invest in the buildings? And I think, again, it's because people aren't thinking of the people in the building as valuable people, because it's the wrong decision makers. Facility managers have a tight budget. We got to be focused on the people that have the budgets, which are the people in the C-suite, perhaps the digital officers and those types of folks that kind of get the bigger picture of where buildings need to be going forward. So.
I'm glad you're bringing up budgets, because with the rise of insurance premiums, shouldn't property owners now take building technologies more seriously to combat that?
Yeah, I would hope so and think so. We are seeing very practical applications of that. The classic one is leak detection, is becoming ubiquitous and pretty common now, and that's largely driven by insurance. I think that's a great example of that. But it'll be interesting. I'm just, I have no idea, but it's an interesting thought to think, with illness and sickness and performance in a building, what implications does that have in insurance and health insurance? I really have no idea, but it's an interesting thing to think about, because that's where big dollars are, obviously.
Well, also you would think that insurance companies want to create incentives for property owners and facility managers to start, looking more into these technologies, so that it would be a win-win for both parties.
Right. Absolutely, for sure.
Mead, have you seen, you talked about COVID, right? And a lot of property owners now are struggling with the problem. How do we get people back in the buildings? Not only property owners, but the companies themselves, right? How do we get people back in the buildings? And you touched upon this, right? Making a building a place that somebody wants to be, somewhere that, something that feels good. I do think that this is one of the good things that came out of COVID, tending to put a little bit more leverage on the people to have a say as to where it is they want to be and where they want to work. How much of a shift have you seen post-COVID in owners now starting to think about that in terms of building technologies?
Big time. And obviously it varies, it depends on the client and where they are and what type of building it is. There's always been sort of these lead users that are out kind of the tip of the spear doing cool things, but I think that's really broadened and become more commonplace now. We're seeing more and more of that. For exactly that reason, I think people have become just more aware of their work environment. It became clear during COVID. This is what blew me away when I started reading newspaper articles about parents sending their kids to school with CO2 monitors. So people started thinking about air in the building really for the first time in our career. It's something we've been managing and engineering for 100 years, but people were actually thinking about it, the people in the space, and which was a sea change in terms of perspective about how people think about buildings. And it continues to this day. Maybe not quite so extreme.
Yeah.
Or as critical, but people still think about it.
I live in Boston and I work from home, and there are days where I decide to go work from one of the newer office towers that have opened here over the last year or two, right? That are all LEED certified and green and beautiful. And like you said, I'll just sit in the lobby, and I want to work there. I want to be there. And so I do hope this trend continues to grow as it relates to owners taking this seriously and investing in these types of technologies to improve the quality of the environment of those around them. Speaking of those technologies, you gave us a little bit of a soundbite earlier, so a bit of the portfolio that you oversee, but just to remind our listeners, you lead Carrier's entire portfolio of building tech businesses. You had mentioned Automated Logic, UTech, which is equipment controllers, Abound, which is IoT, or the Internet of Things, for those that don't know what IoT stands for, Neresco, which is energy solutions, and Enlight, which is the data center infrastructure management. That is a lot of letters, Mead, a lot of acronyms. Please, if you could kindly break it down for our listeners, what these mean to the extent you haven't already, and why would a property owner want or need to engage with any of these solutions? And what are the alternative solutions if they don't?
Yeah, that's great. Thanks for reminding me how complicated we make things sometimes. So let me make it.
He's really good at that.
Yeah, let me make it simple. The way we've been thinking about this is, if we think about sort of a platform of businesses, that we can grow and kind of bring capabilities to and take to market. Most of those businesses we talked about, I kind of put in the intelligent building platform cluster, if you will. So automated logic makes, its goal is to make smarter buildings. UTech is around smart equipment. You're making individual pieces of equipment, smart, efficient, reliable. Nlight is around making data center operate more and intelligently, right? And finally, Abound is around making, not only single buildings, but portfolios of buildings work better together. So I kind of put all those into a wrapper around what I call intelligent buildings and their capabilities. And they're just different businesses focused in different aspects of that, but working together to solve that problem. Those use cases, like we talked about, the fresher air, more efficient buildings, and all the classic examples, touchless, seamless entry, all those fun things. The other big platform is around energy and energy solutions. And that's where a Noresco would fit, an energy services company, do energy consulting, sustainability, carbon consulting, and so forth. And what's really interesting now is kind of those two capabilities, or those kind of two platforms or categories of activity enable, the next horizon, which, the intelligent grid, which is where things are going next, right? As people electrify their buildings and the spaces around them, just tremendous load on the grid. And how do we make buildings more dynamic, so that they can help utilities be more effective? Again, turning buildings into assets, not just things that are something you have to deal with. So we kind of think of it as kind of those three buckets of activity, and I think that makes it a little simpler to understand.
I like putting things in buckets, so thank you for that. It does help tremendously. So a lot of our listeners, Mead, are actually newer to the industry, or they've been in the industry for quite some time and are newer to the tech or innovation side. Tell us a little bit more about the Internet of Things, or IoT. Can you break that down as to what does that encompass? When those are installed in a building, what is it that they do? What type of data do they collect?
Yeah, so I think what's different with that type of technology, and I'm just trying to think of an example. Maybe I'm trying to think of a home example. Well, maybe a home example. So in your home, you have a number of things now, and classic ones, like even a dishwasher. So we got a new dishwasher, you can connect it to your Wi-Fi. I'm like, well, I don't know why I would ever really want to do that, but it sounds cool. So we did it.
Yeah.
But that's an example of an IoT connection, a device, and connecting it so you can start to monitor it and so forth. Light bulbs are another example, some of the smart light bulbs that you can connect to your Wi-Fi. So basically the technology has changed. So it's possible now to connect just a lot of devices into the internet. I'm oversimplifying them, but into the internet via Wi-Fi or what have you. And then you can network that information together and do interesting things with it, right? Traditionally in the commercial building space, that's been the realm of the building automation players, like Automated Logic and Carrier. But those systems are very important. They're the foundation for how buildings operate. They tend to be wired, we call operational technology, right? They're the foundation for how things work, and they actually control things. They're moving things up and down, and dampers and valves and all that mechanical stuff, which is not going away. But then you augment that with another layer of information, and that's what I call the IoT layer, or others call the IoT layer. And that's the information of all these other cloud-based systems that are in a building. And so the Internet of Things layer, all these other devices, you get into things like maybe indoor air quality sensors, a whole range of sensing technologies, access control now typically is starting to fall into that range of things. IP cameras, there's all sorts of other things that are kind of available in a building. Irrigation systems, again, they could be connected to the automation system, but now a lot of those are becoming more cloud-based systems. So it's bringing more information into the mix is what's going on. And with this additional information, what can you do with it to make a building operate better is what it comes down to. Make buildings better, right? What can you do with information to make buildings better? And that's where you get into some of these interesting use cases. And it can go to an extreme, like the dishwasher example. So,
right.
People, the early days, people always want to connect, like the example they'd use was, they want to connect the coffee maker for some reason. Like, and I don't know why, I guess because they could, to see when the coffee was empty or something. But, it can get a little extreme. So I think there's been a little bit of a retrenchment around, what makes sense to do versus what can we do, just because you can do it. So anyway, kind of long-winded answer, but there's a lot of data available. How do you organize that, manage that, do something with it? And that's where platforms like Abound would come in, where it's a data aggregation platform to help building owners bring all that information together in an organized way, perhaps across multiple buildings. So a portfolio manager or a real estate manager can just see how their buildings are operating. As simple as that. That's kind of the simplest way to think about it.
I want this. I don't even have a portfolio. So if you are out there having a portfolio, like, please geek out on this. So first off, I have one more follow-up question for you, but I will say, I think that is one of the best descriptions of IoT I've heard in quite some time, truly. And it's probably because you started with buckets. So always start with the buckets, but truly.
Always start with the buckets.
Always start with the buckets. It's one of the best.
There's always three buckets.
There's always three. Exactly.
Always
so that's one of the best.
Right.
Yes.
Yeah.
I have one follow-up question to you. Can you think of a case study of a success story that you've had with one of your clients over the last few years or whatnot, and where they've implemented one of these technologies and what the outcome of that was for them?
Sure. I mean, there's many. I think the easiest one to understand, because I think it's just immediate payback, is the idea of energy efficiency. Right? Because that's something people really understand. And the technology has evolved where we can augment the building automation systems to do things like we call fault detection and diagnostics, or predictive analytics, to understand when things are going to fail and to kind of fix them before they fail. So we have a number of clients now where, particularly big portfolio clients, they can use this information where before they might, and by the way, some of these customers might think of 1,000 buildings, and maybe, I'm just making this up, 10 to 20 air conditioning systems per building. And traditionally, the way they would manage those is they do PMs, or preventative maintenance, send someone out every 6 months to look at them. Now we do that all predictively with some of these clients. So what they found is, yes, they pay someone to go look at these, but they tended to be people that weren't really highly skilled. They climb the ladder, look up and say, yeah, there's an air conditioning unit, check the box and go home. But were they really doing things? So one of the things we do with the connectivity tools is make sure that were they actually there, and start with that. But then the data quickly showed that we don't have to have those pre-scheduled PMs. We can go and dispatch people only when they're needed, which saves huge, it's called condition-based maintenance or condition-based monitoring. And they can save huge amounts of money by being more prescriptive in how they do things. So if we can predict when something will happen, if we have to roll a truck, then we'll look at the rest of the units on the roof before we send the truck, understand what has to be done, prepare them, go there, do things proactively. And by doing that, just completely eliminate the notion of, PM type visits, prescriptive PM visits. So reduces cost, if energy efficiency goes up because things are working. The client's happy because they're saving money, and they also feel in control because, they know the work is actually getting done.
Yeah, so some downtime, reduce downtime, I would imagine.
Reduces downtime.
Getting ahead of the problem as well,
Exactly.
Before there's any downtime that would impact tenants or occupants of the building or anything like that.
Right. And that opens up the whole, the whole discussion of AI as well, right? Because we use AI tools to kind of augment that process, to get smarter and smarter over time.
Yeah, I think I've heard of that.
Yeah.
Yeah, predictive maintenance is a game changer for sure. You touched on indoor air quality, and, it's been a real big topic since the pandemic. Everyone's talking about it. Joseph Allen and John McCober wrote an entire book called Healthy Buildings. Do you believe that indoor air quality is essential not only for lung health, but also helps boost performance for workers?
Absolutely. Dr. Allen, and we've worked with him for years at Carrier. And I think it was about, I want to say 10 years ago, well before COVID, when one of the groundbreaking studies his team came out with called the CogFX study, cognitive function study, where they determined, on a research-based methodology that it has, the quality of air impacts your cognitive function. So it's not only like the acute health problems like we had with COVID, but your ability for executive function, decision-making, all these things is impaired significantly. It elevated, or I should say, poor ventilation rates, elevated CO2 levels, VOC levels, et cetera. So it's real. The problem is, other than kind of the building geeks like us, it's hard for people to take that seriously because you can't see air, right? But COVID really brought that out, and people started monitoring air and started seeing really how bad it was. And I think one of the things, I think it's from that book, one of the comments was something like, we spend 90% of our time indoors, and so we should pay attention to it. And I think one of the other comments I recall, it might have been from the book, maybe not, is, you wouldn't be drinking a glass of dirty water. So why do you breathe dirty air, and why is that okay? So that's the way we need to think about these things, because it is real, it's important. It just tends to be hard to get building owners to invest in those kinds of investments. When the first thing they have to worry about is hot and cold calls, are people hot and sweaty, those things. Once those first order effects are solved, then we can start managing the higher order effects that are very important.
My first job out of college, I was working as a compliance analyst for a bank, and they stuffed us in this basement. And now I'm thinking I could have been so much more productive in the early days if I just was in a fancy place like where Nadine goes.
There you go. I was going to say, your offices look really nice and airy and clean. So.
I was actually just thinking of my first legal job when I passed the bar exam, and the partner in the office next to me was still smoking cigarettes.
Yeah.
In the office. I would go home smelling like a bar at the end of my work day.
Yeah. I mean, just think about it. When you go to the airport and you go to like a really crowded restaurant or lounge, I mean, you just feel exhausted afterwards, right?
Yep.
But if you sit in a nice area, if you go to the airport and it's practically empty, which is very rare, if you happen to have a 3 a.m. flight or something and it's airy and it's big and spacious, you don't feel so bad.
True.
You mentioned artificial intelligence. I know it's a very buzzy term right now. Everyone's talking about it. But why don't you give us more of a take on how you think it will transform the industry as a whole, specifically in building technologies?
Yeah, great. I think you're right. It is a very buzzy term. So I tend to be very cautious with it because I get burned out on it myself. It's becoming one of those things like IoT or big data or these other things. But it's in a very practical sense, it's very real. And what's cool about it is people can see it in real life, in their real actions. When the kids are playing games with AI pictures and on their phones, I mean, it's very real. So I think people understand the power of it pretty quickly. So where we see the first two areas, I think the first area is this very practical, is just helping people be more efficient. In the building trade space, like many spaces, there's just a acute and growing labor shortage of skilled labor, technically skilled labor. So augmenting what they do with tools is really important. So in our products and in the products in the industry in general, there's a lot of computer programming that goes on and these things in the field. So creating tools to help them do that more efficiently, kind of semi-automatically, if not automatically, is a real thing and it's happening. Is there a day with fully autonomous buildings? Probably. But I think in the near term, it's more about just being very practical and bringing tools to bear, so people can do their jobs more effectively and get more done. I think that's where we're seeing the biggest impact, out of the gate. And even that example around the predictive analytics, those are basically AI-based tools that help people understand what's going on, typically at a central command center, and then being smart about how they dispatch service and do things more productively. So those are examples we're seeing in real life right now, for sure.
Mead, I think you have a really cool job. I mean that. I think it's a lot cooler than being a lawyer like me. So for somebody out there that's listening to you and thinking the same thing, what piece of advice would you give somebody wanting to enter into the building intelligence industry today?
Yeah, great question. I think, first of all, it's a great industry because it's a big industry. And I'll kind of lump all that into HVAC plus kind of prop tech and building technology, all that kind of together. And again, I'll even keep it within the commercial building space. If you had residential, it's a whole nother area, but it's just a really big industry, and you can have a big impact in it. Because there's a lot to do. Things are constantly changing. You know, when I started in the industry, like I said, almost 30 years ago, I had no idea that it'd be as interesting as it is. In fact, I remember when I met my wife and I said, well, I work designing air conditioners. She said, well, aren't you done yet? Yeah. which I still think about a lot because we're still not done. I don't think we ever will be, because things change. Refrigerants change. First it was solving the ozone hole, then now it's solving global warming. It's always the energy efficiency, decarbonization. There's always things to solve. So it's just a really interesting industry with you can build a lot of really strong relationships as well. So I love the industry, at large. And then you get to work with people, great people as well. So that's what it's all about. A lot of opportunity, a lot to be done, keeps changing. It's very dynamic. And there's always a new challenge. And by the way, it's really cool to see, brand new buildings go up and knowing that you had your fingerprints on them. When Hudson Yards went up and you're like, yeah, I had something to do with that. The small little itty bitty piece, it's kind of cool to say these big projects. It's like, it's really cool to know that, you had some small little piece to do with that. So that's a nice thing as well.
When I get tired of lawyering, I'm calling you, Mead.
All right.
Well, Hudson Yards is
plenty of work to be done. We'd love to have you.
Yeah, I was going to say Hudson Yards was such an incredible project. You must have had a lot of fun working on that.
Yeah, absolutely. There's a lot of elements with that as well. They were very cool. A lot of discussions about the technology and that campus as well, and really a city within a city. That were endless and important and so forth. And at the end of the day, ended up getting built, and it's a great place.
Yeah, and I now know who I can contact if I want to get a reservation at Peak. So
there you go. Yeah.
Knowing what you know today, if you could give your younger self one piece of advice, what would it be?
To buy Apple stock and keep it would be one.
That's really good.
That's probably the first one. I'd say, look, it's around keeping your curiosity, I think, is a really important one. It's learning and keeping your curiosity and doing things to stay fresh, I think is really important and really fun. I think that's what, keeps me motivated and keeps me excited about what I'm doing. So there's always new things to do, and just, if you're feeling like you're getting a little trapped in something, just wait and look for the opportunities to kind of expand into new areas, because it will change. And change is good, by the way. Change is very good.
Well, it's the only constant in life, so may as well get used to it.
Yeah, exactly.
So Mead, we know you like to hike. We talked about you hiking with teenagers at the outset of this call, but tell us, what else does Mead do to unwind? What do you do to let your hair down?
I think what I could actually say here.
This is CRE Unplugged. You can say it. We can edit it out if we think it's not secret.
Yeah.
Come on.
No, it's something I love to do. I wish I could do more of it. But living in Atlanta, I can't do as much as I like, and that is sailing. So I lived in Connecticut for many years, up by Long Island Sound, within driving distance at least, and picked up sailing. And I just love that, because you're out on the water, and when you're doing that, you can't think about anything else about what you're doing. Where's the wind? Where's the current? Where's the rocks? And so I really enjoy that, especially, being out in the water is great.
I think we're starting to see a theme with some of our CRE Unplugged guests, don't you think, Brian? Stay curious, continuous learning, and have a hobby that allows your mind to just kind of be, so to speak. So yeah, absolutely. Especially with the fast-paced nature of your job, I'm sure. I gotta say that that's pretty important. So
have to find a way to unplug. Very important.
We try to here as we're unplugged at CRE.
Exactly.
So, yeah.
Viva Las Vegas. We're going to be at Blueprint. We know you're going to be at Blueprint. Why don't you tell the audience members what your panel discussion is going to be on?
Yeah, we're going to be talking about decarbonization and using technology to decarbonize in the built environment. Got a great set of panelists. We have a gentleman from Schneider Electric. We have a property developer from the UK joining us. Joe Amador is joining us. So it's going to be a great session. Looking forward to it. And talking about some of the same things here, but also a little more focus on some of the emerging technologies and some of the interesting investment areas, and how to work kind of with some of these bigger companies like us and Schneider and others for some of these smaller startup firms. So it's going to be it should be a nice time.
Yeah, we're looking forward to it as well.
Yeah. We'll look for you at the craps table, Mead.
That's right. I'll be there. Yes, right. Actually, when they have a lot of engineers in Las Vegas, I think Las Vegas probably loses a lot of money because engineers just don't gamble much. So we're way too practical.
Oh, so. I thought you were going to go with something like it loses money because you guys are at the tables card counting or something like that.
I wish.
That's what I was thinking.
That's what I was thinking. It's like, teach us your ways. Well, excellent.
Well, Mead, thank you so much for joining us today. It was a pleasure having you.
Yeah, Mead, thank you so much.
Very much. Thanks, Brian, Nadine. It was wonderful. All the best on your show. I really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Yeah, and if our audience members want to get in touch with you and learn more about Carrier and their products, let the audience members know where they can reach you at.
The best way to meet me personally is probably just via LinkedIn. Or else you get the show at Blueprint in a couple of weeks. And then Carrier, obviously, go to our websites at Carrier and we can get you hooked up with whatever you're interested in there, for sure.
Mead, thank you again for joining us so much. We look forward to seeing you in Vegas in a few weeks. And to our listeners, please be sure to stay tuned for our recap after this brief word from our sponsor.
Hey there, CRE Unplugged fam. We would like to give a huge shout out to our sponsor, the Game Changers over at Hilo, the customer experience platform for buildings that's turning heads in the real estate world.
That's right. Can we talk about how Hilo is transforming the way we manage properties and create unforgettable experiences? Ryan, what's the first thing that comes to your mind when you think about Hilo?
Well, Nadine, it's all about reducing friction in property management. Hilo is like the magic wand that makes everything seamless and efficient. Say goodbye to those time-consuming tasks and hello to streamlined operations and communications.
Efficiency is crucial, but what about personalized experiences? Hilo takes it to the next level with a vision to tailor each interaction to the needs and preferences of its customers.
And let's not forget the community aspect. Hilo builds vibrant, connected communities. It's fostering a sense of belonging and togetherness.
Now, here's something that truly sets Hilo apart: their commitment to advancing ESG initiatives. They're not just about buildings, they're about making a positive impact on the environment. That's a win-win for everyone.
So, to our listeners out there, if you're ready to elevate your properties, digitize and enhance customer experience, and maximize satisfaction, Hilo is the answer. Please visit hiloapp.com for more information. That's hiloapp.com. Well, that was a wealth of information that we just got from Mead. Shall we break it down?
Let's do it, Ryan. Where do you want to start?
Well, I would like to start with what we talked about in the beginning of the show, which is the state and city regulations that are out there today in regards to sustainability. So in New York, they have Local Law 97. It's a key component of the New York City's Climate Modernization Act. So any building above 25,000 square feet, they have to reduce their gas emissions by 40% in 2030. Mm-hmm. And for property owners that don't comply, they start facing fines of $208 per ton. So unfortunately, the issue that lies there is you have a lot of mid-sized and small property owners that don't have the budgets right now to comply, to implement these building tech solutions that Mead spoke about. So that's a real issue today. And unfortunately, if the city and the federal government don't get involved and create incentives so that they could work with these property owners, so they could implement these type of solutions, so they could reduce their carbon footprint, I don't see this getting solved anytime soon. So even though the property owners are going to probably face a lot of fines and it's going to hurt them long term, there still needs to be incentives out there. What do you think?
Is New York engaging in any of these public-private partnerships yet, or is it too soon?
I think it's too soon. I do know that they did allow for an extension up until 2026 if you show the city that you are working on solutions. So they are giving a break there, but I don't see them working with building owners right now.
No, I agree. Owners are stuck between a rock and a hard place because historically they haven't allocated the right budgets to this. As Mead had said, historically portfolio owners have engaged in preventative maintenance, right? So they would have an annual contract with somebody that, and the facility manager of the organization was the one that managed that, right? And the facility manager doesn't have much of a budget. So you'd engage in somebody to come out, once or twice a year, take a look at the equipment. As Mead said, make sure it's there, check the box and go, which really wasn't that effective. But to his point, other parts of the organization that have the bigger budgets should probably get involved in the conversation, such as the CTO or somebody else to that effect. But I agree with you. There needs to be newer ways of thinking to help these portfolio owners find the money, find the budget, so that they can put in these technologies that are ultimately going to save them money and reduce carbon emissions. So he talked about predictive maintenance, right? So putting in predictive maintenance that can then predict when an HVAC system actually needs to be serviced or when it's actually going to break down, and having somebody come out and fix it before that actually happens. He talked about how it results in cost savings. He talked about how it results in happy clients because they feel like they're in control because things are actually getting done. And also we talked about how occupants of the buildings are happier because there's less downtime in those HVAC systems. So to your original point, we need to start thinking creatively and innovatively about how to help these portfolio owners find the budget for these technologies.
Yeah, 100%. And companies like Vornado and Silverstein, they do have the budgets. And I do know that they are implementing solutions such as water leak detection systems so that they would know when a leak is going to happen in a property. And it ends up saving them millions of dollars. Plus, they don't have to deal with the insurance agencies. And I know that insurance companies right now want to meet with these tech founders who have these water leak detection systems so that they could work together, so that they could help property owners be able to find these leaks, be able to find these issues that are happening in the building before it gets worse. And then you really face these like catastrophic.
It's huge.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's huge. We've got these technologies that do amazing things, right? That can prevent so many expensive problems on the portfolio side. And to your point, we need to figure out a way to make this happen. Portfolios need to start reallocating money, I think, and thinking a little bit more proactively about this. Another big takeaway that I took was indoor air quality, right? And you brought up that question, which was a great one. We talked about Dr. Joseph Allen's book, Healthy Buildings. And I really I know indoor air quality is important, right? But I don't really think I appreciated how important it was until Mead was telling us about how the impact on cognitive function that it has for workers inside of a building, and how you just know if you're in somewhere that makes you feel good and comfortable and secure, as opposed to in somewhere that makes you feel stuffy and tired and, not productive. And I keep thinking about that stat, right, that he said to us that we spend 90% of our time indoors. And so that air quality better be pretty high. And so the one thing, my biggest takeaway from that is when he said it's really hard to get people to take something seriously that they can't see, which is like indoor air quality. Well, you wouldn't drink a glass of water that was dirty, right? So how do we start to get people to think the same way about indoor air quality? What do you think about that one?
Yeah, I definitely agree. I know that it affects me some days. If you're not breathing in like the good air, you're definitely not feeling as productive. If you're not getting the sunlight from a building, you're not really feeling energized and motivated to get your work done. So yeah, I think all of these things that you just brought up really have a real effect on how you perform and I'm glad that people like me have been focusing on it and looking into it more closely.
Listen, me too. I've got allergies. I know when the air is not good. I've got my air purifier here. I can't take it with me everywhere though. So building owners, please, I would be very grateful if you focused on your air quality.
Well, that's all the time we have today. Thank you to Mead Rusert, VP and GM of Building Technologies at Carrier Corporation. Please review, subscribe, rate wherever you get your podcasts. A reminder that Nadine and I are going to be at Blueprint in Las Vegas, September 17th to the 19th. You can join and save $300 off your registration by using the link on our website and all social media pages. Thank you.
Thanks for that reminder, Ryan. If you have any questions that you want us to answer on air, you can always email us at info@creunplugged.com. See you next time, listeners. And until then, keep your convos real and unplugged.